when confronted with a godless person. What could the ungodly man do to change? What would constitute change for the godless man? Becoming more religious? Going to church more? Reading the Bible? Singing songs more enthusiastically? No, you don't want a religious man. You want a man to be more godly. Here are some things he could do and learn to move out of his soul of the ungodly man. Number one, start a search for truth. It is his ego that allows him to believe that although millions seek a relationship with God and Christ, they are all wrong and he is right. In his unbelief, he must somehow come to a point where he at least is looking for truth. The place to start his search for the real God is reading the Bible. The book of John is a good place to begin. Another great book is by Josh McDowell and his title, More Than a Carpenter. I, Steve, have just published a book with Waterbrook Press titled More Jesus, Less Religion. It and the other resources mentioned will help you understand who Jesus really is, what he expects, and what we can expect from him. Number two, have a crisis. He may never change unless he loses something really big, his freedom or his prized possessions or a job. Something that means a lot to him, but hopefully not a loved one. It may take something completely out of control for him to be broken enough to seek God, to finally fix and feed the spiritual dimension of his life. Number three, realize that godliness is a gift, not a reward we earn. The scripture says that no human being is righteous. No, not one. Christ became sin and evil for us in order that we might become the righteousness of God. Romans 3 verse 5. We put on the Messiah's righteousness, not our own. It is grace, not our efforts, that saves us from our wicked ungodliness. Number four, fear the Lord, which is the beginning of wisdom and the beginning of seeking to be godly. Living as if God does not exist is at the heart of godlessness. Taking him always and in every way into account is the beginning of godliness. The ungodly man may pride himself in fearing no man, but he can develop a fear and respect for God by starting to look for what he is doing in others' lives. Number five, place hope in God alone. Placing hope in things that perish or in one's own effort is also at the heart of godlessness. So becoming godly will mean seeking God alone, relying on Messiah's finished work for us, rather than our own efforts. Hope in God means hope in a future. With hope in a future, he will no longer need to seek immediate gratification. He can learn to save the best for last. Snapshot summary of the ungodly man. Clues to help you spot him. Number one, he has no understanding of God from a personal and intimate perspective. Number two, may appear religious in some cases, but it only serves as a cover for his self-reliant actions. Number three, unwilling to delay gratification or think beyond present comfort needs. Number four, often talks of a past event, great loss, or disappointment that is blamed on God. Number five, overly sensitive to and offended by Christians and talk of God. The woman to whom he is attracted. Number one, will vary greatly among types of ungodly men. Number 2, a saint, to save him in the end. Number 3, a person to share his disdain for and disappointment in God. Number 4, a weak woman who will allow him to play God. Number 5, a woman who will leave him alone. The woman who falls for him. Number 1, may enjoy his ungodly ways and is a Bonnie to his Clyde-like personality. Number 2, may be burned out on religion or church or also blames God for some tragedy. Number 3, sees him as a project she can fix for the kingdom. Number 4, is attached to his self-assurance if she is haunted by many doubts. And number 5, may buy into his pseudo-religion if he is active in church, even though he does not allow God to be active in his life. What you can do. Number 1, lovingly set boundaries that allow you to honor God and bring your children to church. Number 2, examine your own motives for becoming involved with him and resolve the areas that apply to your broken relationship with God. Number 3, pray and ask others to pray that God will change his heart. Number 4, whatever you do needs to be done in love so it attracts him to you and God. Number 5, pick your battles wisely. Refuse to allow every issue to become an issue of faith. What he could do to change. Number 1, begin to search for truth by reading the Bible and other materials to find out more about who God actually is. Number 2, surrender, realizing that his own efforts have not produced the results in his life he had hoped for. Number 3, see each new crisis or tragedy as an opportunity to connect with God. Number 4, learn to live beyond the immediate need for gratification. And number 5, search within himself to discover why God is such a difficult concept for him and why the spiritual side of life has been neglected and ignored. That was a powerful chapter, right? Many women have been misled by men who knew how to say the right things, but never actually lived them. And many men have fallen into the trap of wearing a godly mask instead of pursuing true transformation. If today's conversation felt personal, whether you've been deceived or you realize you've been deceiving yourself, I want you to know that this isn't a moment of condemnation, but an invitation for transformation. 2 Timothy 3 verse 5 warns us about people who have a form of godliness but deny its power. It's not enough to look godly, we must live it. Now, let's take a moment to reflect. How does this challenge you? And if this resonates, I love to hear from you. And I love hearing from you. So your thoughts, experience, and testimonies matter. Do you think you can drop a comment on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, or wherever you're listening to this podcast now? Let's keep this conversation going. And here are a few questions. One from our married listener, Vanessa. Queen Rakelia, my husband was on fire for God when we first met, but over the years, he's become distant from his faith. He still talks about God, but he doesn't lead spiritually. What should I do? Vanessa, I hear you. I hear your heart. Spiritual drift is real, and it can be painful to watch someone you love lose their passion for God.